All right, so we'll kick things off, but thanks everybody for taking the time to be here today. My name is David Wadsworth, an account executive here with Revelwood, and joined by my colleague Haley Elliott, who will be the one who's driving and showing you today's overview demo of adaptive planning. Just want to take a few minutes, give you an idea of what to expect today. So first, just some background on Revelwood. We're a platinum business partner of Workday, and what that means is that we're part of an extremely select group of partners that help you evaluate and implement adaptive planning. We have over 25 plus years of experience and are made up of a diverse team of certified and experienced consultants that bring decades of financial operations and system know-how. And we've implemented over 150 adaptive customers over the past couple of years. And this continues to grow year over year. But not only that, we also help existing adaptive customers with model enhancements, integrations, and support services, as well as one-on-one training. So I'm aware that some of you may be here today because you have an active initiative to get a cloud FP&A solution up and running, or some of you may just be here to learn and you're curious. Either way, we sincerely appreciate you just taking 15 minutes of us in the next few days here, either tomorrow or early next week, just to have a quick chat and see where your current challenges are. And also if you had any feedback and whether there are certain resources that we could provide for you to follow up with. An important thing to know is that the demo today is meant to really just give you a glimpse into what adaptive planning can do for the Office of Finance. We should be finished in about 45 minutes. During that time, everyone's on mute, but if you have a question, there is a Q&A button down at the bottom. Please enter it there and we'll be sure to try to get to it. And if not, we'll make sure to get back to you via email. I want to take a moment to share a handful of logos that we've personally worked with at Revelwood to help implement and ensure successful onboarding and experience of Workday Adaptive Planning. Now, I only have a few slides before we get started with the demo. Adaptive planning is a place where you can do your modeling, reporting, and analytics all in one place. So everything that you need is in one solution and will act as your central source of truth, if you will. Typically, we're talking with finance teams, and of course, we're pulling in general ledger data, but Adaptive can connect to really any data source that you need it to, because at the end of the day, data is data, and adaptive planning is data agnostic. They'll be able to bring all that data together into one place to model and report in confidence. This slide here just gives you an idea of some of the areas of the business that you can model and plan using Adaptive, as it's not limited to the core FP&A. You can model out really any operational area of the business that you want with Adaptive. Haley will ensure to dive somewhat deeper into this on the demonstration today. However, feel free to ask in the Q&A any questions or topics that you're interested in exploring, and we'll be sure to schedule a tailored demo with our capabilities at a later date. So I'm sure you're thinking it's all awesome stuff, but what really separates us from the pack? And that's a great question. Adaptive runs on an Elastic Hypercube technology database, which is a patented Workday technology and a key competitive differentiator. There's a couple of types of solutions in the market. There are Excel add-in solutions that have all the same problems with Excel. Too many members in the dimension, account SKUs, job titles. It's going to lock up Excel, and Excel can't calculate just what it needs. It has to calculate every sheet, save it all to disk. So if your Excel is locking up now, your Excel add-ins will lock up for all the same reasons. Then you have your traditional cube databases. The image on the left is a graphical representation of the database. Cube databases have to save every intersection of every dimension. So you see all that white space, it all is a bunch of zeros. And you must save all that to disk. And what our proprietary database does is save only the valid data intersections. It's also intelligent. So whenever you change something, it doesn't have to save all. Rather, only calculates what it needs to. And that's why it's so fast. So where one of these cube-based systems will tell you to keep the number of dimensions down, or it might get too slow, or they'll break the database up into multiple cubes that must be batched, updated losing detail each time you move. Because of this technology, we'll have clients with upwards of 200 dimensions, hundreds of versions and has minimal impact on performance. But the real reason it's key is because it makes the solution scalable and able to have unlimited numbers of dimensions and unlimited numbers of versions and scenarios. And when your system needs more processing power, the system's intelligent and expands to give it to you. But what's equally important is that you'll have this power without losing ease of use and maintainability. So as Haley walks you through the demonstration today, just realize everything is extremely intuitive with drag and drop functionality so that the end users can own the system without assistance from IT. And that's why Adaptive has almost 6,000 customers globally in all industries. It's way more than any of our competitors in the FP&A solution space. And did you know that Adaptive has 95% gross retention rate? It speaks to the value of what these customers are getting out of the Adaptives across all different types of industries, as you can see here. And it's growing rapidly, as you can see. And our commitment to innovation and customer success is recognized by the industry. It's a product that gets the highest user ratings and delivers business agility in times of change. And you can expect the software to be easy to use, implement, and maintain as your business scales. Being ranked at #1 ease of use, customer experience, satisfaction, usability, and the best ROI, this should make you very excited to see Haley's demo.
Beautiful. Thanks so much for the intro, David. So for everyone on the line, thanks for joining. My name is Haley Elliott. I'm a pre-sales solutions consultant here at Revelwood. Just as a quick background, I've been working with Adaptive for 2.5 years and actually started on implementations. So like David said, feel free to pop some questions in the chat. I'm happy to go into some more technical details if there's time at the end, and if there's not, we can absolutely follow up. But we're going to kick things off with just an orientation of our agenda. So we are going to start pretty high level today, just with the basics. So what we call the foundational data model. And that's just really a more fancy way to say kind of the backbone of Adaptive. Then we're going to move into scenario analysis, kind of what's at top of mind for everyone with possible recession, inflation rates where they are, a bunch of concerns floating around. So we're going to talk about how Adaptive can leverage active dashboards to kind of help you plan for that. We'll move into the modeling side of the house with financial statements and workforce planning. That's going to be the main model we look at today. But again, basically any part of your planning process can be brought into Adaptive. And then we'll end on some additional visualization options. So ad hoc and browser reporting, and how you can start to automate any board reporting packages you might be doing with Office Connect. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into Adaptive. So this is my home screen in Adaptive. I say my home screen because this is customizable on an end user by end user basis. That's going to be true of basically everything we see in Adaptive. Whatever data or view is most valuable to the end user is what they can see when they come in. So while I have this as kind of a summary of key company metrics, you could also set this to be a report, company announcements, or even just a basic help page to help people get oriented in the system. But speaking of orientation, we're going to start with kind of the basics. So there are two main components to Adaptive's backbone that you're going to see on just about every screen that we navigate to. And that's going to be the level structure and versions. So just to give a quick overview of both of those, your level structure is essentially your organizational structure. So this can be locations, departments, if you're project-based, you could put your projects in here, anything along those lines. But this is also going to be your first line of security. So for instance, if I have a manager of Sales North and I'm having them come in and enter their kind of sales targets for the year, what I'll do is assign them to their specific level. And then every dashboard, model, or working screen and report will be automatically filtered to their level. So what that's going to do for those of you who are in Excel, you're probably going through maintaining 20 different versions of the same exact template and sending those out to your department heads. Instead, all of that's managed through the level structure. The last note on the level structure is that this is where multi-currency is also handled. So if any of you are multinational companies, Adaptive will actually auto exchange currencies up the level structure. So there's no batch processes. If I'm looking at like Canadian P&L, if I go into that, it'll show it to me in CAD. But if I switch up to total company, it'll go ahead and show that to me in USD. So again, just highlighting some financial intelligence there, and you can always make changes to the level structure post-implementation as well. The other piece before we pop into dashboards right here, versions. So you do get an unlimited number of versions with Adaptive as well. David mentioned it, but we have clients who have hundreds of versions. This is where you're doing your monthly reforecast. And what's really useful here is if you notice this little lock icon, you can actually lock down versions. So if you have something like a board approved budget, you lock that down so that individuals can still come in, look at the data, report off of it, copy it over to a new version for a reforecast, but they won't actually be able to change any of the underlying data in that version. So thinking data integrity and keeping that in mind throughout the demo. So we're going to jump into kind of what's happening here. So like I mentioned, dashboards and Adaptive are called active dashboards for a couple of reasons and play pretty heavily into scenario analysis. So the first reason these are called active are anytime you see a number on a dashboard or honestly sheet or report, you're actually able to click into them and immediately get a different view or kind of dig into the data some. So I have two options here. The first one is going to be exploring data. And so as soon as I click on that, it's going to open up a cell explorer that gives me a lot of really good information. So if there's any dimensionality associated with that data, the input sheet that's driving that final number. And then we also have an audit trail attached to every single piece of data so that you can always go in there and see what changes have been made to the data. You can see all of the end users, when they made changes and what changes they made to that data. And you can also pull that report system-wide if you just want to check everyone who's made changes in the entire system. So again, data integrity. The other option here is a drill down path. So these are all of the dimensions that are associated with my revenue data. The unique thing about Adaptive here is you do not have to predefine these. So in a lot of other tools, you actually have to code in the drill down paths that you want to be able to go through. And then if you add a dimension later, you have to go through the code again to add that into the drill down path. In Adaptive, since it's all one database, no coding, as soon as I add a dimension, it appears in this dropdown. So if I get a question, hey, where is that revenue number coming from? Because that's a question we all get. I can drill down into product groups to see what groups are making that up. Maybe I look into where we're actually selling, kind of more of a market level analysis. And we can do something similar if you have like clinic locations, if you're more looking at service lines. The idea is any intersection you want to be able to get a view of, you can do that through that drill down path. So the other reason these are called active is you can bring your models directly onto the dashboard. So if I actually come down to a lower level, what I'm going to do at the bottom of this dashboard is make a change to how many units I'm forecasting I'm going to sell in my northern market. So in this case, let's say, hey, we think we're going to perform super well next year. So I'm going to go ahead and increase sales by maybe 10%. For this product in this department, we're probably going to sell 15% more units than we expected. How does that change my forecast? And you can kind of imagine this can be anything from units to sales drivers, inflation. If you're in energy, kind of fuel prices, something along those lines. But what's cool is as soon as I kind of ask that question and make the change on my model, you're going to see a little ... come up over every single one of those charts. And it's immediately refreshing. So again, showing you that everything in Adaptive is connected, one database. So once I make a change in a model, it's automatically reflected in my reports and dashboards. You are able to set these up as snapshot schedules. So if y'all have an exec team or someone who likes to get this type of summary view on a regular cadence, you can always just set up a schedule to be sent to them on a daily, weekly, or monthly cadence, and they'll get the most up-to-date data in their email inbox. The last piece we'll run through here is just how you actually build these. So as I've said a couple of times, there's no coding involved in any of Adaptive. So all you have to do if you want to build something like a dashboard is come into edit, and you're going to see I have immediate access to all of these different chart types. So if I want to do something like a column graph or a waterfall, which some of you are probably very familiar with the fun of building that out in Excel, you are able to just come in and immediately have access to every single account in your system. So something cool here is Adaptive doesn't really care if something's financial data or operational metrics. So you can have operational data right next to your financial data, and we can integrate all of that in. So moral of the story here, click and drag. You're not going to need IT to be able to manage that piece. Beautiful. So we're going to keep chugging along. We're about to move into financial statements, but to get there, we're going to run through navigation. So the cool thing about navigation is your entire planning, reporting, and analytics process is available in one navigation pane. So we'll start from the top and run down through the bottom just to get oriented in the system. Sheets are where we're about to go. These are all of your working screens where you're entering data, calculations are happening. These are all configurable. I have a lot in here. It's a demo instance, but this is what we usually meet with you to kind of talk about what your needs are and what we can build out here. Assumptions are any of those key drivers you have. So taxes, sales drivers, average sales prices, anything along those lines. We'll go here. The cool thing about assumptions is as soon as I make a change to one of those key drivers, it updates in every sheet it's referenced in. So this is going to prevent you from having to hard code the same value over and over and over again. And then when you want to update that hard coded value, you aren't going to have to run through and kind of hunt for everywhere you put it. It's just one centralized location. You change the driver, updates everywhere it's referenced. We'll come back to reports. We are not going into consolidations today, but if you have any intercompany elimination needs, Adaptive does have built-in functionality for that, as well as process tracker and workflow to kind of create task lists for people in the system. But where we're going to quickly go is integration. So as David mentioned, Adaptive is data agnostic, so we can integrate to any source system, cloud or on-premise. How this works is we'll set up an automated integration to pull your data in, whether it's GL balances and transactions or operational metrics, directly from the source system on an automated cadence. So you can do that as quickly as every 15 minutes if you want to, or you can go into individual tasks and just click a run button. So the idea is your data is as alive as you would like it to be in terms of actuals. You, of course, also have the option to manually import data. Adaptive takes CSV files very well. It'll actually generate a CSV template for you based on what type of data you want to load. And then the last piece, just in terms of navigation, is help. So as David also mentioned, Adaptive is meant to be owned by the finance team without needing to lean on IT for different reports to manage the system, anything along those lines. So in this support pane, you can do everything from check out what other people are doing in your industry, submit a technical request directly to Workday. They do offer 24/7, 365 support for all of our customers. And then there's always a little question mark at the top of every page. And this is just a context-dependent knowledge base. So you can tell I'm on dashboards. Adaptive is saying, hey, if you're asking for help and you're in this part of the system, you probably need some help on dashboards. So it just pulls up a bunch of different articles and videos kind of guiding you through the most commonly asked questions. Sweet. So we're going to pop into the financial statements and then we'll take a look at workforce planning. So Today, we're just going to be looking at the income statement, but we do typically build out a full 3 financial statement model. So the income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow. And for cash flows, we can do indirect or direct. In terms of what you're seeing on the screen here, this is my income statement. And you can see green numbers and black numbers. Green numbers are my actuals. Black numbers are my plan or forecast data. And it's nicely coordinated with my version symbols as well. Again, Adaptive likes to make this as easy for you as possible. So a couple of points in terms of functionality. As you know, communication is always important during the budgeting process. So you are able to leave comments on any cell on any sheet in Adaptive. So all you have to do, and that's indicated by the little red carrots, but basically if you just right click, you can add a note and that'll pull through to any web reports. So you don't have to go hunting template by template, department by department. Adaptive will go ahead and consolidate all of your notes for you. You'll also notice a lot of these cells have little blue carrots in the bottom. That means it's a calculated field. So for instance, if I come down to my telephone expense field, you'll see the formula right up here in the formula bar. So formulas in Adaptive also do not require coding. They're pretty plain English. The formula assistant is also point and click. So these are going to be much more informative than what you're probably used to in an Excel as well, instead of having to do like A2 times B6 in a workbook that you don't even have anymore. You'll see it's actually telling me what accounts I'm pulling this from. So I have my personnel FTE account times a telephone per head assumption, and that's in those assumption sheets. And then if I ever want to write my own formula, I can just come into the formula assistant. Again, same interface we saw on dashboards, just pick what account you want to use. And that's pretty much moral of the story. Simple, straightforward. The other way that you can actually enter data in a sheet like this is if you have, let's say, a fiscal year budget for new hire training. We're actually changing up our program. So it's just going to be 15K for this year. If I enter that for 2023, what you can do is apply a breakback method. So Adaptive will actually take your prior year actuals and break it back proportionally based on the seasonality in those actuals. So if I click OK, you'll see that that value has been distributed based on what we spent last year. Of course, if you ever want to trace where data is coming from, you still have the option to explore cell. So if I right click on any cell on the sheet, we'll start with salary and wages. I can explore cell. And the idea here is to actually trace all the way back to the input sheet that's generating this number, which in this case will be our workforce planning sheet. One note here is that there's a checkbox on permissions for salary detail permissions. Security is very important and Adaptive, bunch of different ways to manage it. But if someone does not have that box checked, then they will not see these contributing rows. They'll only be able to see the total salary and wages number. So like I said, a lot of security around workforce data, especially. But in this case, we're going to follow this through all the way to our workforce planning model. Of course, I could have also gotten there through sheets. You can see it right down here. So this is another type of model in Adaptive. It's called a modeled sheet. And basically, you can bring any column that you want onto this sheet. And this is a really great way to kind of conceptualize the elastic hypercube technology, is you are choosing the intersections that you want to plan by. And those are the only intersections that are being calculated. So you're not wasting space taking, hey, my commission target by product line or something like that. So a couple of things happening here. We have drop downs. Those are dimensions. So this is basically telling my personnel model, hey, this individual is in New York. So go ahead and grab my New York tax rates for this person. You'll also notice we have two different lines for Will here. He's been allocated between 2 different departments. You could also allocate by project or any other dimension in the system. And right now, these are hard-coded percentages, but if you wanted to integrate some sort of kind of hours actuals or utilization actuals, we can absolutely calculate these values as well. But basically, this is just going to automatically split Will's expenses across 2 departments on our income statement. All of the calculations here are happening in the back end. So if I come in and actually come into row details, we're going to see all of the calculations that we currently have in for workforce planning. This is also completely configurable, but what I do want to highlight is, again, financial intelligence. Adaptive is seeing, hey, in July, Maddie has already hit her max for these 2 taxes. So if you think FUTA, SUI, they normally have some sort of max. Adaptive will actually cut off calculations once they've hit that max and resume in the next fiscal year. Also, one note on fiscal years, you can have a non-standard fiscal year, so no worries if you're not a standard January through December calendar. The last piece here, and then we'll talk a little bit more about reporting, is going to be just adding in new headcount or adding in any rows to this type of sheet. You are able to just come in and either, hey, add a row, you can copy a row, anything along those lines. And then as soon as you save off these changes, that will update your income statement as well. So that salary and wages line immediately increases for Sales North. So you're not waiting for data aggregation overnight, anything like that. It's pretty much instantaneous, and that'll aggregate all the way up to level structure right away as well. So super brief overview of workforce planning, a lot more we could go into there. The last 2 pieces we're going to cover in the few minutes we have left are the other 2 types of reporting in Adaptive. So the first one we're going to talk about is web reporting. So web reports are really useful for ad hoc analysis. So you're doing your budget, you just finished your budget, something like that. And you just want to see kind of how you're tracking against actuals, do some of that budget versus actuals analysis. So this would be the type of report you'd pull then. So we're going to take a look at some of the functionality here. What you'll notice are footnotes. So if you remember those little red carrots on the P&L, those are all now aggregated at the bottom here. Of course, these can also be inline, just personal preference. You still maintain the ability to click into any of this data. So if I see kind of a wild variance here on my travel and entertainment, I'm going to go ahead and drill into my actuals data to figure out where that variance came from. And what's really useful here is instead of having to go back to the accounting team and ask them to look into transactional detail and tell you where this variance came from, you can drill directly into transactions. So typically we'll integrate your transactions into Adaptive, and I can immediately come in here and see, hey, this is the culprit transaction, the lunch that we all wish we could have attended, that's driving us outside of our budget. You can add whatever columns you'd like here, vendor, invoice number, if it's tied to a project ID. But the idea is Adaptive does become your single source of truth, so you do not have to sign into multiple systems. The other piece here is going to be your drill down paths again. So if I want to see my salary and wages by something like function, also you can see kind of an example of an instance that has a ton of dimensionality with no impact on performance. But if I want to look at those salary and wages by function, I can just drill down, pivot, and now I'm seeing that account by S&M, R&D, G&A, and a couple costs of sales. So very easy to kind of flip between different views of your data. You can download these into both PDF and Excel to distribute them, and then building them out is pretty straightforward as well. If I just come in to edit, you'll see, again, all drag and drop. I have all of my elements from Adaptive available right here. And you can actually bring, again, operational data on here if you want to. If for some reason you want to put FTE next to financial data, you can absolutely do that. And just as an example of that, I do have a financial statement and cash impacts report with our income statement, balance sheet, cash flow, and a few financial metrics that most of you probably see pretty often. The last point we're going to cover today is Office Connect. So Office Connect is more used for your formatted reports. So things like board reporting decks, if you have investors, anything that needs to be a little bit prettier, a little more regular formatting, that kind of thing. So the Office Connect plugin it connects Adaptive directly to the entire Microsoft Office 365 suite. So Excel, PowerPoint, and Word. So if I go ahead and actually highlight linked cells, you'll see blue data is linked directly to Adaptive. And just to prove that out, if I explore cell and actually sign in to my credentials, what we'll see is this will actually open up Cell Explorer. So the reason it asks me to sign into our credentials is just to maintain security. So if I actually sign in, we'll see this open up that Cell Explorer. So the reason I kind of go through that step is so you can see one, connected directly into Adaptive. Two, you don't have to worry about people kind of circumventing security permissions and just pulling everything into Excel. They sign in, security permissions still apply, and I can still get directly back into Adaptive even from a report in Excel. Green cells are going to be our dynamic labels. So in terms of building these out, it's again, all drag and drop. So hopefully this pane looks pretty familiar from the previous reporting screen. But I'm just going to go ahead and drag on a couple of GL accounts. While I'm doing this, if you already have reports like this built out in Excel, you can layer Office Connect on top of it and just connect an existing report to Adaptive as well. But you'll see those cells are now highlighted blue. If I know I now need my April board report, instead of spending a couple hours or even a few days trying to put that together, I can come up here to Workbook Properties, roll this forward a month into April, okay, and we're going to go ahead and refresh. So you're going to see two things, these green labels updated and our data for those accounts that I dragged on earlier also filled in. We also have Excel formatting here. So if there's a specific chart or something that you like, you can always keep those. You can leave comments. And then what's also super helpful is if I expand this out, I can get the line item detail beneath each of these kind of parent GL accounts. And as soon as I add a new GL account in my ERP and Adaptive, like 6140, it's going to fill in underneath this line next time I refresh the report. So you're not having to remember to update your accounts again and again in 20 different places. You update it once and it'll flow through to all of your reports. The last piece here, and I think we have a question, is just the ability to actually create this type of report for different departments or locations, branches, again, however you like to organize your organizational structure. But all you have to do for that is come up here to repeating reports. I'm going to open this up to my level structure. And let's say I want a formatted P&L for the US, Canada, and the UK. Create. And what you're going to see are 3 tabs now at the bottom. Exact same formatting, and Adaptive has spliced out my UK data, my Canada data, the United States, and I still have my formatted total company. So in terms of the questions, Jason has 2. So can workforce planning be done in an alternate scenario? Absolutely. So that's normally when you'll create a new version. So that's quite frequent. You can also kind of take your revenue targets and compare it against how many people you have on staff. It'll tell you how many people you need to hire. But short answer, yes, that's exactly why we have the option to have unlimited versions. The second question was, when an employee is termed, does that remove all future salary from the plan, or does their position remain forecasted in future periods? So their position will remain forecasted in our standard setup until that termination date. And then you will typically open up a new kind of blank position. We can modify that logic though to say, hey, go ahead and backfill this position so that the kind of calculations don't drop off. So I guess short answer there is we can do it either way. If you want the calculations to completely stop at term date, or if you want them to kind of become an open rec or something along those lines and continue on. The last question that we have is, can modeling be done in the Excel add-in, or is it cloud entry only? So yes, you can actually enter data. That's where this planning plugin is. And that'll basically pull in all of your Excel or all of your adaptive templates directly into Excel. Individuals can make changes there and submit them back into adaptive. So it's most common that people work in the cloud, but if someone is really attached to Excel, then you can still keep that standardized formatting. They sign in planning, and they'll be able to submit changes to the cloud. So either way, okay. Another question. Thank you, Julia. Can you forecast start dates as specific dates rather than first of the month? Yes, you can. So a lot of times we'll kind of do a partial head count for the month. Also, all of the models that I had up were planned at the monthly time strata, but we can bring that all the way down to weeks and days for any of your models and have different time strata. So yes, that's actually an extremely common use case. Okie dokie. So it looks like that's all the questions we had right away. Of course, feel free to follow up with any others, but for now, I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to David for our closing kind of statements. Thank y'all.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Haley. So hopefully everyone saw, truly how powerful, flexible, and especially how easy adaptive is to use with the simple drag and drop functionality. If you need more, we have plenty of resources that we can make available to you, such as a one-on-one demonstration where we personalize it towards your specific needs. We can also offer up ROI session to quantify the value of this investment, hands-on workshops where we can even get you a hands on a trial sandbox instance. Just let us know what makes sense for you when we connect in our follow-up meeting, or just reach out to me directly. We're always happy to help. And we also encourage you to take a moment and just learn more about Revelwood and our specific implementation approach by visiting our website at revelwood.com. And while you're there, I just encourage you to visit our Knowledge Center. We offer tips and tricks about all aspects of the planning process, some technical tips on the tool, planning tips about the budgeting process, and various tips on other business aspects of your FP&A model. And just really wanted to thank you all again for attending. And one of our colleagues will be reaching out here, in the next couple of days for a 15-minute follow-up call. Hopefully you'll take the time to share your feedback and let us know if there's any projects or initiatives that you might be working on that we can be helpful. Have a great rest of the day, everyone. Thanks a bunch.